Imagine the person you love dying, not once, but twice. The first time, it's heartbreaking, but the second time, it happens right in front of you. I'm rebooting my childhood characters into the next big superhero universe, and in this video, I'll show you how I created the sad origin story for my main character. After spending hours writing and rewriting this backstory just to get it right, I made a version that's both tragic and motivating enough to give my hero a strong reason to seek justice. So how does someone die twice? Actually, a better question, why did I feel the need to torture my main character like this? You see, I had a problem. Every superhero needs a solid backstory. Something that makes people go, yeah, I want to root for this guy. And this gives the character a real reason to step up and be a hero. But this is where the big problem with my story was. When I first published my comic in 2020, I was basically just a young artist with big dreams who just wanted to share my work, but I didn't really have a proper plan. So let's be real, I was just winging it and I was uploading it weekly, so I was coming up with ideas on the fly, which meant I didn't always have time to think things through. I had just jumped off a cliff and was building my plane on the way down. But now that I'm a bit older at 23, I've decided I want to get serious with this. I've had to make a lot of corrections to mistakes that 19-year-old me made. To fix this, I spent hours researching the best superhero origin stories, and I was just trying to analyze what made them really good, and this led me to creating this chart which explains everything I've learned and how to simply create an amazing, tragic, but motivating backstory. I don't want just to torture a character for the sake of torturing them, but to explain the new origin, I'll have to take you through the older origin stories, the evolution of my superhero. Phase 1, B-Man. B-Man. My first attempt at creating a superhero when I was 11. And let me tell you, origin stories didn't matter much back then to me. B-Man had no tragic backstory, no deep emotional drive. He was just a guy with jet boots who could fly around and fight big dinosaur guys. Simple as that. His bee-themed costume was a bold fashion statement, yellow and black stripes, no antenna. He didn't control bees. It was more just like a mascot for a honey brand than an actual superhero. B-Man didn't even need an origin story because to 11-year-old me it was about the action. Why bother with tragic deaths or emotional wounds when you could fly around on jet boots? But the more I grew, the more I realized that the character needed some substance. B-Man was cool for a while, but he wasn't a character I wanted to keep for long term. Phase 2. Nuki. Now, by the time I hit 15, I knew B-Man had to evolve. Enter Nuki. The name was a bit of a change because Nuki means bee in Swahili, and I changed it because of the love of my culture and how I wanted to show off the language of the country. I changed it because of copyright. Some guy made B-Man before me. Nuki got his powers as a teenager from a mysterious goo that landed on his skin, and it kind of gave him multiple abilities. It gave him the ability to crawl on walls. He could just lift into the air and fly, no wings needed, and he also had super smell for some reason, all without gadgets and anything. And then the goo was almost like this magical substance. Probably must have been influenced by my love for TMNT back in the day, because I was actually a fan of the TMNT 2012 version, you know, the Nickelodeon one. Beyond his main superpowers, he also built combat suit, and the suit had these electrifying stingers that came out, and they look kind of like Wolverine's claws merged into one. So that just gave him a way to shock his enemies up close. Now, Nuki did have a pretty tragic, sad story. Shortly after getting his powers, he lost his best friend to a mugger, which was like a gut punch for him, and that's when he decided to use his abilities to fight crime. So yeah, he had the beginnings of an okay origin story, but there was still this feeling that there was something missing. There was the tragic part, but tragedy isn't enough to make a good origin story. But don't worry, the chart is going to help us fix that very soon. Phase 3, Project N 2020. Now this is where things started to get a bit more serious. By 2020, I wanted to push the boundaries of Nuki's abilities and dive deeper into his world. So I came up with Project N. In this version, Project N inherited a swarm that covered his body like armor, giving him bee-like abilities. Flight, super strength, wall crawling, even electrokinesis from the charge generated by his wings flapping. That's like how bees do it during pollination. They actually flap their wings to create the charge that attracts the pollen to them. His powers weren't super tech-based anymore, they were a part of him. It was genetic. And the character definitely leveled up in terms of aesthetic. But when it came to his backstory and his origin, the 2020 character had one major flaw. He was pretty passive. His dad died and then he didn't know, and then he never actually got to meet him. He just heard about it, and it's kind of just brushed off in the comic. He asks his mom about it once, and this could have been like a a massive emotional driver for the character. But instead of seeking justice or revenge, Project N just became a reluctant hero. He actually didn't even become a hero. It felt like the plot was just happening to him, not because of him, you know what I mean? He wasn't motivated to take control, which looking back might have made him seem like a bystander in his own story. Now, I hadn't learned how to create good origin stories yet, but after everything on the chart, I was able to fix it with this newer origin story. Now, in this new Project N that I'm creating now at 23, we've got the main theme. We've got the bee suit, the bioswarm suit, and now I want him to actually be actively wanting to learn it and how to use his powers. I want him to take charge. I want him to witness his own father's death. I want it to fuel his mission. He's gonna train, he's gonna fight and push himself to become the hero this world needs. Now that's where this origin story chart comes in. So let's look at the first part, which is the emotional wound. Every great hero needs some trauma, that deep emotional wound that changes their life forever. This isn't just about feeling sad for the sake of it, it's about giving your character a core reason for who they are and why they do what they do. Spider-Man or Peter Parker's emotional wound comes from losing his Uncle Ben, which is his fault, or at least that's how he sees it. This guilt and grief drives him to become Spider-Man. For Batman or Bruce Wayne, his trauma stems from seeing his parents murdered in front of him as a kid. That moment didn't just haunt him, it shaped his entire life. And then he grew up to become Batman and channeling all that pain into fighting crime in Gotham so that no one else has to suffer the way he did. Plus, it gave him an excuse to wear a really cool cape. Now let's talk about Project N. His emotional wound, well, he has to watch his father die not once, but twice. In the 2020 comic, he just kinda hears about his father being murdered. But in this new story, the plan is different. Project N, aka David Courier, is an architect working at a firm in the dome city of Nairobi Haven. That hasn't changed. But now he has PTSD from something major that happened to him 15 years earlier from when the story starts. David's father was killed in a terror attack. He was only a teenager when this happened, and a lot of conspiracies from the witnesses about the attack claim something deeper was going on. Some people claimed the government wasn't telling the full truth, and some people even said they saw flying men who looked like humanoid bees fighting soldiers in futuristic looking suits. The government covered this story up heavily, and anyone who brought it up was labeled a conspiracy theorist and spreading misinformation and also a dangerous individual. David didn't really care about all that stuff. His father's body wasn't found during all of this, and a lot of bodies were missing. At the center of this conspiracy was the company his father worked for, Nexevo, a company that literally has the government in its hands. And as an adult, David is trying to get over the grief. He still doesn't trust Nexevo, and he spent all those years getting over that trauma. And for the first time at the beginning of the story, he feels like he has. He ends up meeting up with his sister at his workplace, and a man who comes in panting and sweating and looks like he's scared for his life gives him something and tells him to wear this. He says, put this on, put this on. Next thing that happens, they're being shot at, and he starts to realize something. That man looks like an older version of the father he knew 15 years ago. He starts crying as he realizes his father has been hit, and he only has a few minutes to ask him what happened, what's going on. And all his father tells him is, do not trust Nexevo and use this swarm that I've given you, this suit. When David does that, he realizes that Nexevo, the company that his father worked for, is still at the center of all this, is still haunting him. He decides now this is the point where he can't ignore this anymore. He has to actually decide to figure out what's going on in Nairobi Haven, what's going on in this universe, what is Nexevo doing, and that's where the story truly begins. Him trying to uncover this mystery and this conspiracy that's happening. The first time losing his father messes with him in a big way, but it happening again, it's like the universe was saying, hey, remember this traumatic experience? Well, here's a sequel. This double tragedy is the emotional scar that shapes everything about him. It's not just about grief, it's about having that feeling of no control and just deciding that he can't let this keep happening. I know you're probably thinking, that can be it though. What's on the rest of the chart? Beyond just a sad story, here's some other things I learned from great origin stories that they do that I'm gonna be including in my own character's new origin. Foreshadowing conflict. Foreshadowing conflict is always about hinting at the main antagonist of your series within the origin story. It's just to give the audience a rough idea of what's going to be the main beef in your story. Who's your hero going up against? So a good example of this is in Avatar: The Last Airbender. From the start, like Aang's conflict with the Fire Nation is clear when Zuko pulls up to the Southern Water Tribe looking for him with smaller battles leading to his final showdown with Fire Lord Ozai in season 3. But it was foreshadowed from the beginning in episode 1, not even a few minutes after he gets out of that iceberg. For Project N, his new origin is all about his conflict with Nexevo. They've been in the shadows since his father's fake death and now his real death, creating chaos bit by bit, and eventually he'll have to face them head on in a showdown full of tension and stakes. I did this before in the 2020 Project N version, but I still think it took way too long to show this conflict, which it took over like 40 plus pages. But now I'm not only even following the 3-chapter rule, which is a rule successful comic writers and mangakas follow to make sure their story hooks the audience within 3 issues minimum. I want to do it in 1 issue. I want the first issue to foreshadow everything. I think it's better to just get to the point and start the story. The other thing on this list is a unique twist. Great origin stories usually have a plot twist that shake things up, and it makes it even more interesting to hook the viewer from the beginning. A good one that I really love is Invincible, when Mark Grayson learns his dad Omni-Man is actually a part of an alien race that's planning to conquer the Earth. That's a pretty good twist. Definitely gets people talking about the show and the story and just being interested in what's going to happen. Iron Man 1, Tony Stark realizes his weapons are being used by the same terrorists who kidnap him and almost kill him. That's the plot twist that ends up changing how he views him making weapons. For The Flash, it's him finding out that his arch nemesis Reverse Flash was the one who murdered his mom by going back in time and killing her, and then framing his father. Although anyone who knows Reverse Flash lore knows he's definitely the #1 biggest hater of all time. I've never actually seen anyone who's more of a hater than Reverse Flash. For Project N, the plot twist is finding out his father, who he's been grieving for years, is still alive, only to be murdered again in front of his eyes. The only reason his father was looking for him was to give him his superpowered suit, aka his swarm. That looks similar to the conspiracy theories of B-men he heard about all those years ago. It's a devastating blow that pushes Project N not just to seek justice, but also uncover the massive mystery that's being covered up by Nexevo with the help of the government. There's actually 2 twists in the new Project N origin, but I won't be spoiling the second one because I want you guys to be able to see it when I release it eventually. Next, you need to showcase your power system. A great origin story is a perfect time to show off the powers. It's not all just about the story and the trauma, it's also about showing a taste of what the power system looks like. In Avatar The Last Airbender, when Aang is attacked, he uses his bending, so you can tell that this is a world where people can manipulate elements. In Green Lantern First Flight, immediately after watching Aben Soa die, he actually ends up getting the green ring, and then that allows him to fly and do all sorts of things, so you already understand the basic abilities of Green Lantern within a few minutes into the film. In the 2020 Project N, it took him way too long to start using his powers, so in this one I want him to witness his father's murder and immediately after get to use his new abilities, like almost instantly after they're activated. Project N's suit gives him flight, super strength, wall running and electrokinetic powers, and this time I want to show all of this in the first new issue. The final thing is new purpose. Once heroes face their struggles and get their new powers, they need something more. They need a mission. For Deku from My Hero wants to become the #1 hero, Batman wants to become what every criminal fears, Naruto wants to become Hokage, Spider-Man wants to use his abilities to save the world. For Project N, his mission is clear. He can't run from Nexevo anymore. He needs to seek justice for his father and discover and expose all the evil that Nexevo has been committing before it's too late. Beyond this being a superhero story, it's also just going to be a mystery as we watch Project N uncover and expose all the secrets and conspiracies and cover-ups that he's in the middle of. I've been trying to find the best way to tell this origin story for a while. I made B-Man when I was a kid. I published Project N on Webtoon at 19. Now that I have all the knowledge I've gained over the years, pouring my heart and soul into this Project N story, I finally think I found the best version of it. It's not been an easy journey or an easy year, just like David lost someone in the story. I've not only lost someone I cared about personally this year, but we also lost greats like Benny from Comicstorian, as well as people like Akira Toriyama who had a huge impact on the world. So a lot of these losses just made me realize what's truly important in life. Like, we really don't know how much time we have left. And I realized if there's one thing I'd want to do, and I'd be glad I did it, it would be telling this story. From start to finish. I want this to be like my life's work. You know, after everything I've been dealing with mentally and all the sad thoughts and negativity I've had, I'm just done with feeling hopeless and negative about life. I read the comment section on the video on the power system, and just seeing all you guys' love and support on my characters and my universe, I just didn't realize how much you guys actually enjoyed and were excited to see my work, and it just gave me a new perspective on things. There's no point in spending all my time being sad and negative when I still have this gift of life. So I want to put all my energy into making this new project and the best story it can be for you guys. I want to make like 10 volumes of this new version of the story, and I've already started on the plotting and the scripting and the covers as we speak. Your support, your comments, your encouragement, they mean a lot to me, and to be honest, I feel like I owe it to you guys to bring this universe to life. I know some of you watch me and aren't really subscribed, so make sure to do that and hit the notifications button so you get my new videos. I want you to be able to watch this universe come to life. I also want to say thank you to all my Patreons. I really appreciate the support. I have a new video on how I'm designing the weapons that Nexivo is using to take down insectids on Patreon, so if you're interested in more content from me and want to show more support, you can join my Patreon and get exclusive content there that's not here on YouTube.